Hello, good morning. I am going to talk today about podcasting and why it should be a part of your marketing strategy. Podcasting is so powerful in so many ways, and we're going to talk a little bit about both hosting and guesting. And I'm going to put some resources for you in the description as well, so you'll be able to utilize some of the stuff that I'm talking about today. And I forgot to check whether my mic was working, but I'm pretty sure it is. I don't know. It's probably too late to check that. So fingers crossed that that's working. So I first realized how powerful podcasts could be a few years ago. I really got into this podcast that was about marketing because I freaking love marketing. I mean, that's why I do what I do, right? And it was two co-hosts, and they would chat back and forth. And it was so warm and friendly and interesting. And I just was feeling so connected to them. It was just like hanging out with friends in your living room, right? And that's one of the things that makes podcasts just so spectacular. It builds up this know, like, and trust factor really fast, really high. And I realized that because these women pitched a kind of like a course, and I bought it. I bought the course without ever having spoken to them, just from listening to the podcast. And then I discovered that the podcast I was listening to hadn't been broadcasting in 5 years. What I was listening to was super old, and I never realized it because podcasts don't tend to really showcase the date on them that much. And the course was empty. There was nothing in there. I had to hunt these women down on social media to get a refund. So that's the kind of thing that podcasts do. They make you feel so connected to the hosts that you just follow them anywhere. So that's what we want to do for ourselves. Podcasts, I think, do both that. They do so many things. They build the know, like, and trust factor. They increase your visibility, especially if you're guesting on different people's podcasts. You start being seen around the web, and people get familiar with your face and your voice and your tone. And over video, you can really get a sense of people better than just reading a blog post. You can really feel somebody's personality and somebody's energy and whether they're a good fit for what you're looking for. You meet so many people. I mean, networking is still one of the most powerful things in marketing, and it probably always has been. Now we get to network on Zoom, and I'm doing a ton of it because being on podcasts is my focus right now for the first quarter of the year. So this is something that I've been super immersed in recently. And coincidentally, a lot of the people in my sphere are also really into doing the podcasting right now. It's like a whole movement. So some of my colleagues have recommended various different networking groups and ways to get involved in podcasts. My business coach himself is doing a lot with podcasts. He focuses a lot on how you can become partners with the people that are on your podcast, or when you're podcast guesting, like how can you connect between host and guest and continue to work together and find ways to make the relationship really profitable. And he has a workshop coming up, so I'm going to put a link to that in the description. It's Profitable Podcasting for Partnerships. 5 golden questions that turn podcast guests and hosts into profitable partners and the roadmap for finding them. I've been to a couple of his previous workshops. They're really good. Very, very practical. So definitely take a look at that. And then he's doing that with his partner, Michelle. He and Michelle have done a few different ventures together as business partners, and she does done for you launching of podcasts. So if you're trying to create your own podcast, she's a great resource because she just helps people launch with everything that they need. Her thing is amplifyunetwork.com. So I'm going to have that linked as well. And then she's done partnerships with like Evans Putman, who is a delightful and hilarious human being and very fun to be in a workshop with for 4 hours at a time. And Kimberly Crow, who has more energy than anybody I've ever met. So Michelle and Kimberly are doing Podapalooza. Michelle and Evans do the podcast sales machine, which is how, as a host of a podcast, you can generate sales. And I'm going to talk in a minute about how you can get a whole funnel into one podcast. And then Kimberly also has the Speakers Playhouse, which I highly recommend. This is a free networking event that happens every Thursday. For my time zone, it's 1:30 to 3 Eastern time. And it's on Zoom. There's about 200 people on there. Everybody gets a chance to come up. If you have a podcast, you say what your podcast's about and who you're looking for. If you want to be a guest on podcasts, you come up and say what your talk title is and who you're a good fit for. So I've met tons of people through doing that. So yeah, everybody I know these days is like really into the podcasts. So the first thing I want to talk about is how the podcast can be your entire funnel. You may have heard me say before, one of my signature talks, the thing I talk about a lot is that for an online funnel, there are only 3 things that you need. You need some place where you meet people, you need some place where you nurture people, and you need some place where you make an offer to people. And those don't have to be 3 separate places, but they often are. But in podcasting, they can all be one place. When you're doing speaking, whether it's podcasting or on a stage even, you're in front of somebody else's audience, so you're meeting new people. Or maybe it's your podcast, but you're doing things to promote it so that a new audience is coming in and listening. And the act of listening to you as you deliver value during those podcast episodes, that is nurturing. People are getting to know you. They're getting to see what you're all about and whether the offers that you have are something that interests them. And then at the end, you make an offer. So the whole funnel is squeezed into one thing. You do have to talk to podcast hosts before you just start pitching yourself, because, most of them are happy to let you mention a free gift or, bring people to your lead magnet, but you have to talk to them about the nature of how much you can offer and pitch yourself during the podcast. But the main focus of the podcast is, of course, to give tons of value to their audience. And that's a real key component to becoming a guest onto podcasts. There's no shortage of guests. So if you find a podcast and you want to pitch yourself to them, you might start thinking at first like, oh, they're going to be so delighted that somebody is reaching out to them because they need guests. And, it's got to be hard to keep up with finding guests if they need a new one every week. Oh my goodness. But actually, there are a lot of people pitching podcasts, and podcast hosts don't have a super hard time finding people to be on their podcast. So you want to get a little bit ahead on that and do more about your value, more of talking about how you can be a benefit to their audience, because that's going to get their attention a whole lot better than just like, hey, are you looking for guests? I'm a guest. I could come and talk. Like, if you can tell them why your talk is going to really give their audience such a good takeaway, then that's going to boost their relationship with their own audience, as well as get you more likely to be booked and to build a relationship with their audience as well. So definitely think about that as you're pitching yourself to be a guest on podcasts. And I will leave some links to places where you can find out about podcasts and more information about pitching yourself. You're going to want to have a short bio prepared, a bio that is really shows off what benefit you give to the audience and what your expertise is, but short, pithy, great headshot. A lot of people put together a speaker one sheet, which makes it look very, very professional. So that's just a one-page document that has your headshot, your bio, how to get in touch with you, some of your sample topics, some of the suggested questions that hosts could ask you. I have an example of that on my blog that I'll be putting up. And then, of course, there's starting your own podcast, which I mentioned my friend Michelle does done for you complete podcast launching. So that's a great option. But if you're not ready for that, you can do what I'm going to be doing, which is just getting started with a Facebook Live and going from there. It's good to just get something started, because, the more time you don't do it, the more you're missing out on the opportunity for those collaborations, that visibility, those offers all of these great things. And it also gives you the benefit of you have something even more exciting to offer, something really valuable, which is a stage. So when I said lots of people are trying to be guests, if you have your own podcast, then you're in a great position to reach out to people that you want to collaborate with, that you want to work with, and say, hey, would you like to be a guest on my show? Like, that's amazing. People want that. Everybody's like, oh, yes, please. You're offering me an audience, a stage, a place to be seen. Yes, absolutely. So, whether or not you're really going to start your own, or if you're just going to look for guesting, I really recommend getting involved in podcasting from one end or another or both, because it's just so powerful for all of these marketing activities. And yeah, like I said, I'm going to put together a bunch of resources for you and put that into the description or the caption or wherever it ends up being. So take a look out for that in a few minutes, because I am just live right now. But we are going to turn that off, and I'm going to put in all the links wherever I can figure out where they go. And hopefully next week I'll have a guest with me, and we will start this as a podcast. I'm just going to download the audio and put it on Anchor for distribution, but it's also got the video element here where you're watching. I have this on LinkedIn and Facebook and YouTube. So I am going to start looking for guests to bring some extra value to you and really get as much good information out there for all of you as I can. So I will definitely see you next week.